Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on our spotlight session today. Today's guests, we have Karen and Michael Pillion from Pillar to Post Home Inspections. They are a very good husband and wife team that own the Pillar to Post franchise. They're local to the area. And they also do a ton of different inspections that I thought, would be great to have them back on to showcase some of their other departments that they work in and things like that. So today, we're going to be covering pool inspections because it is summer and there are a lot of pools, that have been opened in the last few months. And, you're going to come across some of these listings that do have pools. And, I showed a house maybe a month ago and there was a pool and it had like a hydrogen filter or something like that. I had no idea what it was. So my client was asking me a question about it and I just you know, let me get back to you on that, one of those types of things. So I'm like, this would be a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about pools, the different aspects of it, the different things that go, the different components and all that stuff. So I brought the professionals in to give us a rundown about all those things. So I'll let those guys take it away. Karen and Michael, thank you for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. And it's feels great. I know it's different than being in the office, but we're going to do our best to be able to explain everything that we kind of go through regarding pools and what the inspectors look for, what they do specifically when it's regarding pools. But just to catch everybody up to speed on if they would have missed last time. When was that, Lawrence? I know it was a couple months ago we were on talking about just the overall of Pillar to Post and what we
Right. That
do.
was, yeah, that was a couple months ago that
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that was a
just
few
in
months
case
ago.
if there's some new people coming on that missed the last one, we're the Michael Pillion team. As Lawrence was saying, we're a husband and wife team. Our office is actually in Bridgewater. We service all of Somerset and Hunterdon County and the surrounding areas. So our philosophy is we go wherever you guys go within reason. We're not going to go down to Atlantic City. That's a little trek too far, kind of thing. But we say anything about hour and a bit, kind of in our area. We kind of travel to. So we've been up to Sussex, we've been down the shore, we've been in Warren County, Mercer, you name it, we've been there. But I wanted to start out by kind of just introducing us. We're the Pillion team. Michael and I are the owners, and there's multiple different Pillar to Post offices around. So, like I said, we service kind of Somerset and Hunterdon areas. We have Michael, Tim, and Bob are our home inspectors, and then we do have a dedicated sewer inspector, Chris. Nowadays, people are really getting more into caring about the sewer line because even though it's public sewer, the township's responsibility for the sewer line only starts at the street level. It's the homeowner's responsibility of what leaves their house up until it gets to the street. So during a home inspection, the inspectors don't have visibility into the drain lines. So he's been with us, oh, I don't know, over 2 years now, maybe. So that's becoming more and more prevalent in things. And then I'm here in the office to answer all the calls, quoting, anything that you guys need. We clearly do home inspections, but we also do radon testing. Every home inspection that we conduct automatically includes a termite inspection. Radon testing can be added to our packages, but like I was stating, we still do sewer line inspections. We're going to talk today about open pool inspections. Our team only does pool inspections on open pools. And maybe Michael will get into this here in a little bit. But when it's a pool that's closed, it just, we want to be able to always add value to you and your clients. Doing the pool inspection on a closed pool kind of misses a lot of those things. So we don't feel like we're getting any value because they're not able to run the pump, the motor, the heater, any of those things. So I know Michael will kind of get into that in a little bit. But we do mold and air quality samples. We can certainly coordinate oil tank sweeps and septic inspections. Basically, our kind of motto is one call will handle it all. If it's something that we don't do, we got somebody that can do it. So, septics, oil tank, lead paint inspections, if your clients needed something like that, even if it's not something that we do, we can certainly coordinate it on their behalf. But today I know we're actually going to be kind of focusing a little bit more on the pool specifically, but I just kind of wanted to give an overview just in case if people missed the last presentation we did.
All right, great. So good morning, everybody. What I'm going to do is, as Karen mentioned, we're just going to focus today more on what we do for swimming pool inspections. And as Karen just said, I'll just kind of reiterate real quick. We just stick to open pool inspections because we feel that's where we can add the most value. There are plenty of companies out there that will do a closed pool inspection. If you guys need a pool inspected during the off season when the pool is closed, that's certainly possible. Well, I'm not implying that you should not get an inspection at that time. Mm-hmm. It's just that we feel we can add the most value with an open pool inspection, so that's what we stick to. And so what I want to do is just go through some slides with you, just kind of highlight how we approach it, what we do, what we're looking for, what we're inspecting for. So just as a general overview, when we're inspecting a pool, first we're looking at the surrounding environments. So that's going to get into like fences and gates and things like that, things that are not necessarily part of the physical pool structure, but are related components that are very important and could be important for safety reasons alone. We're looking at the pump and filtration system. And this is one of the reasons why we stick to open pool inspections, because in order to really adequately inspect the pool filtration system is you got to see it running and see what's going on and look for anomalies that you can only see when they're running. And if it's closed, we just really don't get the same view into this. That's one of the reasons why we don't do it. Related pool equipment. We're going to get into all of these things in a second. I'm just giving you a quick overview. So just pool equipment that's related to the inspection itself, like cleaning equipment, etc. Pool walls and structures, obviously, that's very important. If there's any kind of structural indication of structural issues with a pool, that's probably the single biggest expense you can have if it's not structurally sound. So we're looking at everything we can see visually just to see if there's any indications that there might be some problems. Electrical and lighting, all of the electrical components, if they have a sub-panel, electrical panel out there, we're pulling the cover. We're looking at all the electrical components we can get our hands on, the outlets, the lighting, etc. And then if they do have a pool heating system, we're inspecting that as well. So surrounding environment, as I mentioned, we want to make sure there's adequate fencing, gates, and barriers around. This is for two reasons. One, we don't want like a young child straying into the pool area where you could have a drowning incident, or even animals. Animals can get in there and possibly get in the pool and do a lot of damage or drown or cause problems as well. So we're always looking to make sure we have that fencing around, that they have the proper gates. Gates are working properly. They should open outwards, and they should have an automatic close and latch feature when they're going to a pool area. So when you open up a gate, if you let it go, it should automatically close and it should automatically latch. So we're looking for things like that. Any kind of defects in the fence. They may have a fence up, there may be a section that was hit by a tree and it's broken down or damaged. We're looking for evidence of things like that that should be fixed. The other thing we look for on fences that people don't always think of is we're looking to make sure they're not climbable. So you want to fence something like this where it's got the vertical spindles, so they're not horizontal ones, would make it more climbable. And we want to make sure there's nothing right near the fence that somebody could hop up on and just hop over the fence easily, like a tree that's right next to it or some kind of structure that just makes it easy to get over the fence. So we're looking for things like that as well. Surfaces leading up to the pool, so walkways, decking, things that are leading up to the pool area. Again, just for safety issues, make sure we don't have any trip hazards or issues there. And just any other kind of enclosures that they might have around the pool. Filtration system, again, this is one of those things where we really got to run the system to see it. So what we want to do, inspect the filter. One of the things we look for is just for obvious things like leaks or might be contamination, but we're also looking for things like the pressure gauge on the filter. And that'll tell us how well a pressure gauge is an indication of whether the filter is not working properly or might be dirty. It's one of the things we explain to the clients when we walk them through how to maintain their pool. The pressure gauge on a filter is very important because it tells them when they need to backwash or clean the filter because it's got a lot of debris built up, or it might tell them the indication that it's not properly filtering water through it and that it's got an issue. So expecting the filter and the pressure gauge stuff is very important. I'm inspecting the pump just to see if it looks like it's pumping through properly. One of the things we're looking for in the pump is if you think of a pool pump, they have something in there called a strainer pot. It's a little, you have a little clear cover on it. It's got this little strainer container in there. It's straining out any debris that got through the skimmers and stuff before it gets into the filter. But in there, you want to see pretty much solid level of water. If you see a lot of bubbles in that strainer pot, that usually means it's pulling in air somewhere, and it shouldn't. So that means there could be an issue at like the skimmer level, or there could even be an underground broken pipe where it's just pulling in air. So we want to look to make sure the pump is working properly and it looks like it's bringing in water and not a lot of air. Looking for evidence of obviously evidence of leaks and things of that nature. We're going to inspect the skimmers, looking for any kind of damage. Looks like making sure we're getting the proper circulation of water going through there. Looking for something what's called a weir door. It's a little flap that's on a skimmer. So when the pool is on, the flap, the water pressure or the water flow pulls the flap down to go into the skimmer. But when you turn the pump off, that weir door should go back up so you don't have debris flowing back out of the skimmer and back into the pool. So we'll look for things like that. Chlorinator system. So there's different types of ways to chlorinate a pool. What you're seeing more and more these days is something called a salt chlorinator. We're seeing on a lot of pools these days, especially newer pools. And what that is that's a device that takes salt and it converts it into like a chlorine. So rather than using the chemical tablets that you'll also see in pools, these salt chlorinators are supposed to be a little bit more of a natural, better way to get chlorine in the pool through a salt conversion. And they usually have a control panel on there. And you can kind of monitor how well that looks like it's working and if there's any issues there. In addition to that, we, although it's not part of a standard pool inspection and not everybody does it, we test the water. So we take a sample of the water and we have a tester kit that tests for the different chemicals such as chlorine and pH and things of that nature. I think there's like 5 or 6 things we test for. And we do put that in the information in the report just to indicate to the buyer where the chemical levels are at, where they might be low, just so they're aware of it. And it's something that they can be vigilant of when they have the pool. So we do that as part of our inspection. And main drain is important for a couple of reasons. From a safety standpoint, we just want to make sure it's not one of those old, what they call entrapment covers. So the main drain, which is typically at the deep end of the pool at the bottom, years ago, they used to have the covers that would allow, that just had like the openings on the top. And what happens is if you went down there and like put your hand on it, put something on it, it would kind of suck down what you put on it. And there was an incident years ago where a young girl was swimming deep end, it had one of those covers. She got caught on that and she drowned. And she actually got stuck. The suction sucked her and she couldn't get out. And she actually drowned. And they actually created a law based on that. I'm trying to remember her name. It was starting with A, Amanda or something like that. Don't quote me on the name. But they covers are now have to be, the main drain covers have to be changed where they're not entrapment anymore. Where even if you put like your hand on it, they have openings on the side that don't allow you to get sucked down onto the drain. So things like that we're looking for, damaged drains that can allow big debris pieces to go into the filtration system. So things like that.
Mike, I have a quick question about the
Please.
chlorination system. Do you find that is the salt one, I guess, just as good as like using the chemical chlorination? Like, is it, I don't want to say more safer, but more hygienic, I guess, or more cleaning of the pool with the chemical chlorination as opposed to the salt?
We find it to be very effective when they're working properly, when we're inspecting and we're seeing all green lights on the panel and they're working well. And then we test the water and we see the chlorine levels where we would expect them to be. The water looks clear. Um, and I would say, and when we see them working properly, I say they work very well. And they are, like I said, a little bit more, not only are they a little bit more of a maybe natural solution where you're not using the chemicals, but the other problem with the chemicals is people would sometimes take those tablets and they would put them in like the skimmer, and they really don't belong in there, because what that does, that puts a high concentration of chlorine going into the filtration system, which is not what you want, into the skimmer area, and it can cause damage, and that's not what you want. If you're going to use those chemical tablets, the older style, you want to distribute the chemical chlorine one of two ways. You want to use either like a floating, you maybe have seen those little floating
Hmm.
device that float in the pool. Sometimes they have little decorative things on it, like a rubber duck or something, but they have chemical tablets in there that disperses the chlorine. Or you have a dispenser that's on the pool filter system, the filtration system. It's right after the filter. They'll have a little container in there, and then that will disperse it more adequately and safely the chlorine into the pool for using the chemicals. But with the salt ones, because the salt generator, the cell is on that filtration system, it disperses it properly without doing any damage.
Mm.
So those are the advantages we see. But I would tell you, when they're working properly, when we test the water and we see the water, they're very effective.
Okay.
But we also often see them. They're one of those things that can be easily neglected. We just did a poll literally a few days ago, earlier this week. And I don't have the picture right here, but I bring it up. But we looked at the panel. They had a salt chlorinator. We looked at the panel, and it had some red lights on it. It said inspect the cell and low salt levels and stuff like that. And then we tested the water, and the chlorine was off. Not only was the chlorine off, but they had a salt chlorinator system with those error messages on the panel. But then when we went to inspect the skimmer, there was a chlorine tablet in there. Um, and I think the reason why was because, again, because the salt chlorinator system was not working properly, they were kind of augmenting it or supplementing it with the tablets in the skimmer, which, again, we don't recommend. So it's a great system as long as it's maintained.
Got it.
But just other pool equipment, like I said, we're just looking at things like diving boards and slides if they have it. Diving boards and slides can be inherently dangerous. So we actually always put in our reports, we recommend removing them. But if people are going to keep them, we do our best to try to look for any kind of defects in a diving board. If there's any cracks or any damaged sections that look like it might be unsafe. Same is true of a slide. Just to at least do our best to make sure if they're going to use it, they're going to keep it, that it's in good shape. And if not, we're going to quickly call that out. Ladders and steps. If there is a cleaning system, a lot of people have the robotic cleaning systems now. We're looking at that. Sometimes they're not used; they're off to the side. But if it's in use or we can inspect it, we're at least doing that. Any other related equipment that you'll see to the pool. The pool we just did earlier this week had little statues, like 3 little statues that were fountains. So they were on the edge of the pool, and I forget, the statues like a dog and a couple other things. And they had a little tube that came out of the mouth or whatever that would act like a little fountain going into the pool, a little stream of water shooting into the pool. Problem is, though, they weren't secured at all. So when you went up to them, and they were pretty heavy, they were made of, I don't know, like a plaster or something, but they were relatively heavy. So if you went up to them, you could shake them. And if someone was to be on the edge of the pool and pull on them or something, they'd probably pull right into the pool, which, one, could hurt somebody, and 2, could damage the pool. So we were quick to point that out. But anything related to that, if they have a waterfall, when they have spas attached to the pool, we're going to do our best to test all the related equipment associated with that. And then the heating system. So if they have a pool heating system, we're going to run that. We're going to test that, inspect that as well, look for any kind of defects in the inspection process, turn it on, and make sure it's actually heating the water. And I've had agents and other people ask me, well, how do you really know it's working? Like, you can run it, okay, it's running, but how do you really tell it's kind of heating the water? It's kind of hard to tell. So the way we do it is we use thermal cameras. We use thermal cameras in our home inspection, but we also use them in our pool inspections. So thermal camera, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's a camera that just pretty much shows temperature change. So we use it to look for leaks in like a ceilings or walls, or we use it to inspect electrical panels to see if there's any overheating. But we can also use it for very effectively. It's inspecting a pool heater. So there's going to be two pipes on a pool heater. One where the water's going into the heater, and the other one where it's coming back out. And obviously, the water pipe temperature on the pipe of the water going in should be cooler than the pipe going back out. So you see over here on the left, this is blue. It's about 82 degrees. This is the water going into the heater. And then over here on the right, this is the water coming back out. You'll see it's up 87 degrees, and then you'll see it's kind of a reddish color. 5 to 7 degrees, typically what a pool heater will do. Usually it's how much it heats the water on average that we see. But you can clearly see that it's at least working. Very important part, obviously, is the pool wall and structure. So as I said before, if you're going to have a major expense with a pool, probably the biggest one might be if you have structural issues. So we're inspecting very carefully what we can see. Obviously, there's parts we cannot see, but what we could see, we're looking for any kind of damage to if they have a liner or a gunite pool wall, looking for any kind of cracks or defects or any indication that there might be any kind of structural issues or areas where there might be water leaking out. Looking for any kind of scaling, evidence of scaling on the siding, which is an indication of pH might be low. pH is one of the things we test for when we test the chemicals, so we'll also be able to indicate if the pH was low. Coping and decking. So for those who might not know, coping is the area that goes around the edge of the pool, and then decking is kind of like your platform area, your deck area. It's important to inspect these areas for a couple reasons. One, obviously, we're inspecting if there's raised areas that might be a trip hazard or things of that nature, but also areas where water might be getting in. Because if you think about it, especially like at the intersection between this coping and decking, this is the back edge or the underside of the pool. So if you have water getting in there, you're getting water into the pool structure, the part that's actually supporting the pool underneath. And we don't want that to happen, because that's where you can get some of those structural issues. You can get soil erosion, and then you don't get the necessary or proper support of the pool wall. The decking might start to sag down, things like that. So we're looking to make sure all of this is properly sealed. Even a minor thing like a caulk seal between a deck and coping, it's not a major fix. It's not a big deal if there's no damage done, but it's something we want to make sure we point out, because it's something where it can start very innocently, but if it's left for a while and you get water going down in there, it can lead to much bigger issues. So those are some of the things we're looking for. Again, even if it's an easy fix, it's something that they definitely would want to get fixed, and we explain to them why that's important. So we're carefully looking at all of that. Electrical and lighting, as I mentioned earlier, we do all the electrical as if we were inspecting a home. So if they have a sub panel, we're going to pull the cover. We're going to inspect the wiring in the sub panel. We're going to check outlets to make sure they're GFCI outlets and they're working properly. Pool lights, always want to inspect and test for those. Any kind of timers, switches, and outlets, anything that's related electrical. Sometimes they got the blower motors for the spa that puts the bubbles in the spa. Looking at all that, making sure we don't see any exposed wires or things that might be either a safety hazard or might result in damage to the equipment. Last but not least, on the electrical, this is one of the most important things, and one of the first things I look for is pool bonding. And what pool bonding is when you have any kind of metal components to a pool, such as a filter. Filters a lot of times are plastic, but pumps for sure, and even the heaters, the cabinet, pool heater cabinets, those are metal, and they should have something called the bonding wire. And if you see some of these pictures, this is one from one we just did recently. These are our pictures. This is where the bonding wire should be attached on top of the filter, the pump, I'm sorry, and it's not there. This is the one that should be attached to the heater, and you could see it's detached. It's not attached to the heater cabinet. The purpose of bonding is to just eliminate any stray voltage that may work its way into the pool. And there have been instances, unfortunately, where people have been in a pool and they have been electrocuted because there was feedback of electricity into the pool water. So what bonding is intended to do is to help prevent that. And it's really important that it's in place. So again, one of the first things I do when I get to the pool inspection, I get over to the equipment. I want to make sure anything that's metal, such as this pump, such as the heater, and any other related components, have these bonding wires and they look like they're properly in place.
Mm.
Sometimes there's certain metal components that we can't see the bonding on. For example, some of the metal ladders that are in there, or the handrails that go out of the pool. Some of those are bonded from underneath. They're bonded where they slide in that housing there. And unfortunately, sometimes that's in the ground and we can't see that. So I can only inspect what I can see. But for the parts that I can see, if it's not bonded properly, to me that's a red flag, and I point it out very quickly.
Here's a question from the chat. Can an underground broken pipe be repaired or does it need to be replaced?
In my experience, they usually need to be replaced. It's an interesting question because some pipes, like if you think about pipes in a house, like you have a drain pipe or whatever, if you have a big enough diameter, what a lot of companies can do now is they put in what they call sleeves or liners, and they can kind of overcome a breakage without digging the whole thing up, or if it's in an area where they can't get to, by kind of lining it. The problem is pool pipes aren't as wide necessarily as some of the drain pipes in a house. Let me put it this way. I haven't heard of a company that's doing some kind of liner or something to fix a crack. They usually, that in my experience, they dig them up. If it's in an area where they can't dig it up, like if it's under a pool decking and it's all perfect, then there might be a way they can do that if they can get to it, like some kind of patch or something where they don't have to dig it up. So I'm going to qualify what I say, but when I've heard of it in the past, they've started digging, to be honest.
Hmm.
They
Makes
what they
sense.
can do, however, I will say this: what I have heard of, we were Karen mentioned earlier, we have a sewer scope person. This person probably doesn't do it, but there are scoping cameras for smaller pipes like the ones on pool. So if they're getting air into a filter and they or a pump, and they say, well, where's it coming from? Could be anywhere. What they can do is scope the lines to see if they can find the defect where it is. So I have seen the scoping of lines, the pool lines. I don't know if I've seen them fix them from the ground up.
Hmm.
That I don't
Okay. Here's a question. Well, my question. How much do like air bubbles affect the structure of a pool? Like, like in the lining or in like the sides of the pool. I've seen this in a few different pools that have like a bubble, like, forming in the wall or on the floor. How are those, as far as structure goes, how are they, affecting the structural integrity of the pool?
If you have a liner that's not leaking and it's just when we see what we call blistering or bubbling, like you're talking about, or what you'll sometimes also see in them is just like the creases, like the raised creases where it's not like a
Hmm.
bubble, but it's like a crease, like you might see like a raised piece of carpet.
Yeah.
Um, if it's not leaking, it's not necessarily going to affect the structure of the pool. What it will do is a couple things. One, it makes it very susceptible to, if somebody steps on that area or if a cleaning a robot goes over it, it may cause it to leak. In other words, it makes it, when it's raised up like that, it's easier to put a tear or a rip in it and have it leak. The other thing it does, especially with the creases, is it's just another area for like dirt and stuff to get stuck in that area and stuff. So
Hmm.
if it's a sealed bubble, I don't think it would necessarily affect the structure that way. Now, if it's leaking in there and it's putting constant water against the structure, that's different. But if it's
Hmm.
not leaking, it's my concern would be it's a leak waiting to happen.
Hmm.
And it's probably going to get a tear in it some way. So either someone's going to step on it, or a robot's going to run over it, or whatever it's going to, or it's just going to kind of wear. It's going to start getting maybe a little bigger, and then it's just going to get a tear in it. So we always call out creasing, blisters, things like that. The other thing with liners that we want to look for, that you'll also see, is around the top where they're connected up near the coping, where top of the liner where it connects at the very top. We don't like to see gaps or openings there either, because again, it's just another area for water to get in behind the liner. And then when it starts getting in behind the liner, again, it loosens up more of the liner, can loosen up more liner, and it's also getting into that structure area.
Hmm. Got
So
it.
we're looking. So those are some of the things we're looking for in a liner. We're looking for gaps and openings along the top. We're looking for creases, blisters, obviously tears and holes. Even if they're worn, like we're looking to kind of see liners as they start to get older, they just start to wear naturally, like a roof shingle or anything else would. And it's an indication that it's starting to get to near end of life and be more susceptible to leaks. So that's something we would mention as well. This is an important part. So client review. Last but not least here, a lot of times we're working with a client, it's maybe the first time they've ever had a pool. They never had an in-ground pool or even above ground pool. They really don't know what they don't know, so they don't really know what to ask, but they also don't know how it works and stuff. So what we try to do is go through at the end and not just talking about any defects we found or problems we found, but also just review how the system works, go through the circulation system, talk them through how it works, what they need to do, what they need to look for, kind of like we would in a house. We might show them where shutoff valves are, furnace filters are, etc. Well, the same thing here. We're showing them, here's your filter, you got your gauge, pressure gauge and filter. Here's why this is important. Here's how you would do a backwash. If it's a sand filter or a diatomaceous earth filter, the cleaning method is be a backwash. So explain that to them, how that works, how they would do it, the importance of maintaining the chemicals, what the chemicals do, why they're important to maintain, and just general maintenance of the pool. A lot of times people might use a separate company to open and close the pool, but they may take on the general maintenance during the season, just do the chemicals and stuff like that. So we just want to go through and explain to them what that is and how that works. And we also hand out at the end, we have a PDF version of this. This is just some screen prints, but we have what we call a pool care cheat sheet, as we like to call it. And what it does, it just contains different information for the general maintenance of a pool. It's going to talk about the circulation system, cleaning the baskets, monitoring the pressure gauges, things to look for, how angling the jets so they have the return jets prevent a proper water flow around the pool so the skimmers are doing their job. So it talks a little bit about that, the cleaning options, keeping it clean, keeping the surface clean, and then some of the automatic robotic cleaning options versus the old-fashioned net and brush that I did when I was a kid and we had a pool. We didn't have a robot at that time. And then again, chemistry being the chemicals, what they are, why they're important to maintain, different ways to, different type of chemicals they should have on hand. And again, we provide a separate part in our report that gives them the testing of the chemicals in the pool and what they were at the time. So in addition to explaining here how to do it, we also tell them what the baseline was when we did the inspection. And that's basically the highlights. I'm willing to take on any questions, either swimming pools, or if you have another question about home inspections, anything you guys have, it's fair game.
Michael, I have a question, and thank you for the presentation. I'm Alfredo. The first question is, the majority of the properties that we go up, that we sell as a realtors are very, and I don't want to say old, but unfortunately the word is old. I mean, they're built in the 50s, 60s, maybe 70s. Yeah, I'm assuming that some of them have already, in certain areas have some pools that were also built or created or put there when the house was built. Your take on old pools versus new pools? I mean, of course, the mechanicals and all the electricals and things of that nature are, for a new pool are a lot better, of course, but um, a lot of our clients are probably buying properties that have been in the market or been built for 50, 60 years, and the pools are probably the same scenario. I want to hear your take on that. And my second question will be, robotic versus hand push. Like you said, in the old days, you put a hat and you take your shirt off, and there you get your best suntan of the world by just brushing the pool. But how's that compared now to the robotics, which I feel that probably take a little bit away the control of you having control of the pool and knowing what is going on. If you brush it, you probably see more than what just sitting you on a nice area and let the robotics do the work. Thank you.
Sure, Alfredo, thank you for the questions. I'm going to take them in reverse order. Regarding the cleaning system, you're right. And like I said, I had a pool growing up, in-ground pool, and we had the old-fashioned I would put we didn't have earbuds probably, but I would, have the transistor radio. To be honest, back I'm a little too old to have the earbuds and the cell phone back when I was young. But I would have the transistor radio on with like a baseball game on or something, and I would be out brushing the pool and doing that stuff. So that's how I used to do it. Um, some of the robotic cleaning systems are very effective, and we see them in there, and the pool looks really good, and they work well. But to your point, and I think it's an excellent point, I think you lose touch and contact. It's kind of like that set it and forget it type attitude where, okay, I'll buy the robotic, let that guy run around all day, and I won't have to worry about it. But you kind of lose. You're not looking at some of the other things. You still need to be monitoring, testing for chemicals, monitoring for conditions on pressure gauges and stuff. And if you're not doing the cleaning, maybe you don't have the incentive or motivation to go down and do that, and then maybe do some of those other things. So I think there's definitely drawbacks to the robotic ones. I do think some of them work very well. They roam around you see them climbing up the sides, they're roaming around the bottom, and they're getting to almost every part of the pool. It's amazing how well they do, but you do lose contact with the pool, and there's other parts to maintaining a pool other than just cleaning it. So if you think you got a cleaner, you don't have to do anything, that would be a mistake. So if someone's going to get that, I would strongly advise they have the discipline to make sure they're still getting down and maintaining their pool and being interactive with their pool, even if they're not physically pushing a brush and skimming with a net like I did. So back to your first question regarding old pools. When we get to a pool that definitely appears older, house is a little older, and chances are the pool's a little bit older, it looks a little bit older. Again, we're kind of extra vigilant, if you will, looking for any kind of defects that may be happening. Like if, for example, a decking or coping that's starting to sag down a little bit. Yeah, it might be a trip hazard, but we're more concerned that there's settlement going on down there that can affect the structure of the pool, even if we can't see anything visually that's affecting it. So we're kind of more vigilant on those older ones just to see, if it's a gunite pool, does it look like it's deteriorating? Because you can tell, I was mentioning before with a liner, it starts to fade, and you could tell that it's starting to get older. Gunite pools are the same way. They'll start to flake. Depends how well, as with everything else, even with an old home, it just depends how well it's maintained. Did they get it resurfaced when it needed to be done? Is the surface starting to flake? And even if it's not actually cracking, does it look like there's some deterioration on it? Does it look like the pool's maybe not been as well maintained? And because the reason why it's so important is for anybody who's ever owned a pool or gotten a quote, if you have a pool that you inherit that's damaged or on its way out, and you're going to have to get it replaced or do major renovations to it at some point, it's very costly. Pools can be very expensive. It's not a cheap endeavor if there's a significant issue with them. So we do our best, and like I said, we can't see what's going on underneath, unfortunately, but we can look for symptoms and do our best just to give people a warning, like, hey, do me a favor, as we would the home inspection, do me a favor, get this checked out by a professional before you close, just to see what your estimate would be. Because if it's something significant, we just want them to know, if they have a deck and they have a big deck and it's really got some major issues, we'll say, hey, look, get the deck checked out, or at least get an estimate of what the repairs will be before you close, because it might be more than you think. There's a few things that comes up. Mold remediation is one of them. People are always shocked when they get the mold remediation bill, or chimneys, as you guys probably know. You guys all do this. If the chimney integrity is compromised and they need significant work on a chimney, you guys know as well as I do, chimney bills they're always more than people think. So things like that, we try to just give them warning, and we'll do the best we can to identify everything we can.
One last question. What is typically the number or the lifetime year of a liner? Since we're talking about old pools and potentially, the house, the way that I'm comparing it is, a roof will probably give you X amount of years, and some other stuff in the house will give you X amount of years. So for a liner, what is the recommendation when it comes down to even replacing it, or that you feel that the shelf life or the lifetime of the liner is done.
Yeah, it's interesting because the problem with not problem, but the challenge with kind of put a lifespan on a liner is it depends how well one it was installed, because we see issues where that probably date back to when it was installed and not installed properly. We were talking before. Lawrence asked about blistering and creasing and stuff like that. A lot of times that might go back to the installation process, and if it wasn't stretched out and installed properly, you're going to get some of those symptoms. So that's one factor that goes into it. Another key factor that can go into it is chemical and chemical balance, and maintain proper chemicals. If you get the pH, you get the scaling, and you get the imbalance, maybe high chlorine when there shouldn't be, that can also wear on a liner and stuff. So it's hard to put an average lifespan on it. I would give them things to look for to show that it's either aging or there's concerns. Those creases, those blisterings, those detachment along the top up near the coping, the fading of the liner. Obviously, if there's any kind of tear or crack or anything like that in it. It's kind of like people ask us, how long will my furnace last or air conditioner last? And it's just so hard to estimate. We did a house just the other day. The air conditioners were over 30 years old, and they were. We tested them; they were still doing, still cooling well. Now we put comments in the report that they should be budgeting just because they're working now. These are very old systems, and they should be budgeting, et cetera. We give them different things to note when they have older systems. But I've seen air conditioners that are 12 years old and they're not cooling well, and I've seen air conditioners that are over 30 years old and they're cooling well. So it's just one of those things where a lot of it comes down to how well it was maintained and how well it was installed.
That makes sense. What would you say are like the most common issues that you see when doing pool inspections?
Um,
I know it
Decking and
varies. It definitely probably varies from pool to pool, property to
Just
property.
like the
Size,
houses vary.
right. The size of the pool matters, all these
yeah,
different type of things. If there's a deep end, if it's all shallow, if there's a jacuzzi that's attached, a fountain, I know there's
right,
all
right,
type, a million different things that can go
yeah.
on.
There is, and you're right. There's we have different sections for our pool, and we kind of use them all. But I would say if I had to list the top ones, decking and coping, can be an issue, either where it's not sealed well or it's offset and things like that. Decking and coping, unless it's a newer pool, a lot of times when we get into those older pools, that was mentioned, that's certainly something that we see that can be quite common. Other things that we see is just systems that require maintenance. Like, and I'm going to go back to the salt chlorine system. It's a great system, but it requires maintenance. And systems that require maintenance, oftentimes we might see where they're not getting the attention they need, and we'll open the panel and we'll get those lights on. Hey, your salt is low, or hey, you got to inspect the salt cell, type of things, because it's something that people need to maintain. As we were talking about before, when you're cleaning your pool, you should look at the other components, and it's just easy to forget about it. People get busy. I'll relate it to something in home inspections. You guys have probably seen many times before. People who have central humidifiers on a furnace, that's the ones that put humidity in when you're running the heat, but they have a filter in there and they're a moisture environment. So if you don't remember to change that, it's called a water panel, but that filter, and maintain that system, sometimes you open them up. I opened up one just again earlier this week. They had 3 of them. I opened up, it was just all mold. And the problem is that's going to be blowing mold into the house because people forget the panels in there. It's a moisture environment. It needs to be maintained or you're going to get mold. So it's things that require maintenance on pools like that, such as a salt cell. That's an example. When we test the water, sometimes we'll see some of the chemicals that are off. That's another common thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns? Karen, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, so everyone can have your
Sure.
number or your website and all your good stuff like that, so they can reach out. Should they have questions, comments, concerns, just like me, that I usually reach out to them as well.
So I actually have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm Erica, and I'm actually in Essex County. My buyer and I are under contract on a property with a pool, and this is my first pool. We don't really have a lot of pools in the area. So what we found, or what the pool inspector found, was that there appears to be a structural issue. He says that the walls are heavily bowed. So that maybe the structure is compromised or failing, but he also said that it was a concrete pool. So the seller's agent said, it's actually a fiberglass pool. So she's arguing because he couldn't even figure that out. Like, what does he know? What does he, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So my question is like, does the type of liner or whether it's a fiberglass or a concrete pool, does it matter in terms of structure?
It does. So concrete pools, which they also call gunite pools, are more where they, if you ever look at the build one, they dig the hole, they put in the metal structure. It's almost like if you think of a wood structure of a wall. This is something similar to that. But it's metal components, metal barriers, and then what they do is they kind of put on the sheathing and spray the gunite onto that. So it's got a metal structure behind it, and it's got the quote concrete or gunite wall. Fiberglass pools are usually installed in one piece. They come in usually on a truck, and they're built as one fiberglass piece that will sit into the hole. And then liners are, like vinyl liners are a little bit different. They have a kind of a structure wall behind it again, kind of like a little bit of like a concrete or structure wall, and then they put the liner over it. But it does matter. Fiberglass, again, because it's more of one piece, it's for the walls to bow on a fiberglass one, it would usually start to crack. So I'd have to see it. I don't want to inspect it from here, but fiberglass concrete is, if you think of a concrete wall like a foundation wall in a house or something like that, again, you can get cracking in it and you can get bowing in it if there's like hydrostatic pressure. Versus like I said, a fiberglass one, we should start to see like the fiber, if it's bowing significantly where it's pushing on it, I might see some cracking in it, or you might start to see the fibers start to show, to be exposed. But you can usually tell the difference pretty easily. If you put your hand in the water and you rub against it, a gunite or concrete is more of like a coarse surface, almost like a concrete block, not quite that coarse, but you know what I mean. It's got like that concrete keel, and it's got a seal on it. Fiberglass is more smooth. It's more of a smooth surface, almost kind of a little bit like a vinyl liner, but it's fiberglass. So,
Okay.
but yeah, there would be different structure. My point is there would be different structural concerns. All of them could have structural concerns, but they could have different ones.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
And one of the things I'd like to actually be able to add is, when we're doing home inspections and there's a pool, we do discount the pool inspection if we're doing the home inspection. So, but we can certainly do, obviously we would love the opportunity to be able to do the home and the pool. However, maybe the home inspector does not do pools. Always feel free to reach out to us. One, to be a resource, number one, but two, we can certainly do a standalone pool inspection. Like I said, we would love to be able to have both, but if the current home inspector does not do pools, we can certainly come in and just do the pool. Our pricing for the pool inspection, for a standalone pool inspection, it depends upon the pool itself, but on average it's going to be about $525. And then if we're doing the home inspection, we do discount that down because one, we're already there and we'd like to be able to, the more you spend, the more you save, kind of a thing. And we do discount the pool inspection, again, depending upon the pool type, but on average it would be about $475. So they do get a good discount when they're doing the home inspection. Anyone else have any questions?
Questions, comments,
Pools,
concerns?
homes.
I think we're all got
Yep.
enough
Okay,
information for the
great.
day.
I just
This
want to
was
thank you,
awesome.
Lawrence, and the team. This has been great. I know a lot of times you guys don't get a chance to be able to, you know, pick our brains. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to share some of our knowledge. And I say our, it's a team collaboration, even though Michael's the one that did most of the talking because he's the inspector and he's more of the expert. But if you guys have any questions or anything, I did put my office number in the chat as well as my cell phone. Either number you can certainly call or text. And we're always here to be a resource. And just want to be able to thank you again, Lawrence, and your whole team. It's been great.
Yep,
Absolutely. I
thanks,
want to
everybody.
thank you guys for coming on again and giving us a great presentation filled with tons of information about everything that we need to know. I do look forward to having you guys back on in the near future as you are friends to the office and
Yes.
forever now. Don't, you know, you're not going anywhere. You're stuck with us now.
You can't get rid of us that easy,
So I
you
do look
know.
forward to having you guys back on in the near future. Absolutely. Guys,
Okay.
join us next week for a spotlight where I'm having a credit repair company come on. That's going to be very
Oh.
helpful for our buyers and for ourselves as well to learn a little bit about learn about credit repair, how we can fix our own credit, help our clients fix their credit, all those fun types of things. So look out for that email, which I'll be sending out next week. And I hope you guys have a great fun-filled weekend. Lots of fun, lots of sun, little more smoke. We'll get rid of it sooner or later. But
Thank you so much. This was a very informative session, and let's send some business to this company.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Have a
Yes.
great one, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great weekend. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.